I've got somebody also I'd love to make a connection for you, Jim, in the auto space financing.
Okay.
He's a good friend of mine. His uncle actually owns a company that does the payments, basically. It's like a digital credit card.
Right.
And then they pay back to the dealership 1% of anything that's processed. It doesn't cost anything on their end. But he does a lot of cold calls. And I told him the other day, I said, I'm going to try to connect you and make it's so relationship focused. I'd love to intros for you. And you just happen to be the one that's connected to all of these. So it's fun. It always works out. But
yeah, that's right.
And welcome everybody who's listening. Good morning. And if you're on, say hello. If you're watching later on, drop a replay, but definitely let us know you're here. Other than that, Jim, thank you very much for joining us. And good morning, John, again. For those of you that don't know Jim, I'm really excited to have him on and hear his story and what he's working on, as he's super passionate about sustainable options in housing. And for those of you that know, I'm very passionate about sustainable options out of hemp for housing. And so I'm excited about the conversation. But Jim, I'd love for you to introduce yourself and tell me a little bit about what you guys do and who you are, and what your background is, and brag about yourself for a minute.
Oh, sure. That won't take long. So my main career, my day job, as I call it, has been automotive consulting. I got in the car business back in 95, and then I stepped into the finance segment of the car business in 97, and I've been in that segment ever since. And then in 2000, I started doing automotive consulting, traveling all over the country and calling on dealers who do poor credit financing. So that the finance business has really been my arena for a very long time. But some time ago here in Salt Lake, I met an architect who's got these brilliant designs for micro housing. And, you know, it's clear that there's a need there in multiple segments. And so my interest was in helping him turn this into a company. And so we've been working on sort of the underpinning of that company now for some time. And we're about to get in a position to start building some. We've got engineering completed on a casita style home, you know, which is a small, just kind of like an ADU or studio unit. And that was an interesting product in that it can be built completely in a warehouse and delivered to the site, of the homeowner's choice. And then the other one is a townhome. There's actually 3 products, but we're only launching at this time 2. And the second one is this micro townhome, which is really a fascinating design as well. Been very popular as we socialized it. And so that's been, again, something I'm just helping Boyd VWEG as our architect partner. And he's just got these outstanding designs that people have responded to very well. So we're looking to create a company around that. And we brought in a third partner who comes from commercial construction. And we're now, getting in a position where we can launch this company, in a big way. And of course, for our conversation here today, one of the more recent interests, and Boyd, by the way, is very interested in efficiencies and sustainability and all things that benefit the environment and reduce waste and all those kind of things. And so, I obviously come from that as well. I have somebody who is originally from Oklahoma. A big part of my influences there were Native American people. And so we see, obviously that's where this thing starts to intersect for us on the hemp side, is that, we just know that what we see is there's a lot of great lessons that come from the Native American people if we'll just pay attention. And so this sustainability piece is just part of what, comes to be of interest to myself and to Boyd. And so as we move forward, we hope to be able to create a product that is almost entirely from hemp. We certainly are looking to build solutions that go off grid, and that means solar and wind and whatever kind of other energy sources can be available. But the product is obviously the hemp is what becomes of interest to us as a building product.
Awesome. So help me understand, when you say these homes, they're manufactured, what about the townhome? How is the townhome different or constructed differently?
So the townhome, and both of these designs, by the way, are patent pending. We filed for full patent on both. And so the clever part of this, and there are many clever parts, but the key thing about it is the way that it's constructed. So as you know, in this arena. And by the way, this is all stuff that I've really gotten steeped in the last year or so, just because I didn't come from the housing background. I don't really come from real estate. And so as I've learned this segment, what I'm finding is that, our building technologies are really the same as they've been since World War II. I mean, we're using the same methods that we
Right.
always use. And so one of the beautiful things about Boyd's design is it sort of bypasses a lot of the conventional bottlenecks that you see in construction. And that means we're able to ship materials to the site. And though there will still be a general contractor because there's a crane involved, a general contractor can work with an unskilled team at the site. And imagine building a multiplex of 4 townhomes in a matter of 2 weeks. So that's roughly the technology that we're talking about. All the materials are shipped to the site, and I'd love to be able to share with your audience at some point some of the designs that we have and actually how this thing is built. But the beautiful thing is just being able to have materials sent to the site, and obviously we'd love for that to be hemp materials at some point. We ship those materials to the site, and then a team assembles the structure in a matter of days or just a few weeks. And so that's one of the really appealing parts about what we do. And it's micro housing, so it's smaller square footage than what we're seeing in the industry. And that just means more affordable, for those who are willing to accept a little smaller structure, and maybe, those who are interested in the minimalism and the way that we already talked about, with the travel trailers and before we went online, that's kind of part of the thing that is appealing to many. And so we're able to offer a really affordable solution and something that can be constructed quickly, which is always of interest to developers. The sooner they can get in revenue, the better. So that's going to be part of the appeal for those folks.
Well, and it hits both sides, right? The convenience.
Right.
So many people buy on convenience. But when you talk square footage, what is a square footage of the box? The home that comes in the box?
Yeah. So the primary design starts at 600 square feet. And there's a reason that we stop at 600 square feet on that particular design. There's some special appendixes in the building codes that allow us to kind of, if we meet the definition of the so-called tiny home, and we're not as extreme as the typical tiny home, but if you meet the definition of tiny home, you're afforded some different structural features. Okay, and so that's why we choose to build that one at 600 square feet. Now, there's another one that can be approximately 800 square feet. So you're talking about a 400 square foot main floor, like a studio main floor, and then 200 square foot loft for a couple of small bedrooms, but beautiful floor to ceiling glass, rooftop outdoor space, covered parking, tons of storage downstairs, because one of the beautiful parts of Boyd's design is we ship all materials to the site in a shipping container, but then that container, instead of becoming living space like so many are doing, we choose to make it storage space. So this container stays at the site and where all the materials have been delivered, and now it gets incorporated into the structure and the foundation. And so now you've just got beautiful, storage space in addition to your minimal living space, and it just makes for a really smart design.
I'm excited to hear about this and excited to talk more about this. But
Sure.
Before I do, hello, everybody that's watching. Hello, Steve and Sarah. Good morning, Don. I'm super excited about the exposure, I guess, or the opportunity to now bring the hemp products into the design.
Right.
You don't have any hemp products in the design, is that right?
We don't currently, and so we know of some hemp providers. We're learning about some of those now. The design, the material that we, or the building material that we really have in mind to use is a SIP panel, which is not widely known, a structural insulated panel. And we've not found a supplier of those with hemp yet, but we expect to be able to make those intersect, at some point. And so that's part of my interest in participating in these conversations is find ways to be able to build SIP panels and you name it out of a hemp material. We're hearing, of course, about hempcrete, and that's an interesting possibility as we move forward. I think for us, we're more interested near term in actual, board material that is created from hemp, and we know that's a possibility. So I want to talk to anyone and everyone involved in hemp and figure out how we create this, because, you know, as I mentioned, part of my motivation really comes from some of my influences through the Native American people. And, you know, we've got some people, I'm sure Cindy Mon is probably amongst your circle of friends, and she's somebody who serves as a great inspiration for me. And what we know is, as I hear about the approach with natives thinking about building things, and I'm sure you've heard the expression seventh generation when it comes to natives. You know, when you think about building something, that you think about 7 generations behind you, then you start to hemp just naturally comes to the top of the list of things that you would choose to build from. If you're really thinking about something that's going to serve your community well, if you're going to be a good steward, and that's something certainly that, you know, there's lots of parts of me that want to be a good steward in the community. And so, you know, the native thing and the idea of building something that's going to be around for 7 generations and serve those inhabitants well for 7 generations, then hemp makes sense.
It's pretty crazy when you compare sustainability of 2x4s made out of wood compared to hemp, or the breathability, or the lack of mold, or the fire rating, or the structural ratings, right? Compared. And as I talk to people, even this weekend when I was up in Wyoming and talking to so many people, my passion is so obvious when I talk about it. And I don't know if it's so much that I'm really that passionate about it, or if it's just that the knowledge is so misunderstood, and that it's so easy when you know the value of hemp to say literally in every aspect it is more beneficial than what we're currently doing and using.
Right.
And so it's pretty I have to keep myself in check. How about that sometimes? We're talking about it because we're like, whoa, slow down. Currently in your building plans, right? Is it mostly like, what is the exterior of the building currently?
It can be anything. There can be any kind of exterior cladding. So we'll build to kind of meet the environment, and we can offer any kind of exterior that the homeowner might desire.
So you pretty quick could find hempcrete blocks for the brick. You could do the spray for the walls, right? The flooring, the roofing tiles.
Right.
I know that there's a couple of facilities here locally that have patents on roofing material made out of hemp. Tell me a little bit about tribes. This is something I've been really excited, and as I've been talking to some of the finance people and some of the people on our board or potential board members, you know, we talk a lot about these tribes. For those that don't know, have housing opportunities or options for their tribe, their members, right?
That's right.
You know, and I look at how great for us being in Utah to provide that supply chain where they can grow their own hemp, right? And for those that don't know the value of what hemp does, even if all they do is plant it, for the carbon footprint and for what it does for the earth, especially these tribes up in the Uinta Basin where their air quality is bad and they're, you know, it's an oil refinery. And so being able to pull all of that out and then utilize the hemp, break it down and utilize it in hempcrete. It's that full supply circle. What type of movement do you guys see, and how can we help put those pieces together to support our tribe and keep the rural communities growing?
So I have some insight on that. We're in discussions now with one of the Native American groups, one of the largest Native nations in the country, and we want to be part of that solution. You know, we've just made it very clear we have strong motivations. And my wife and I recently traveled. You heard me say that we were bouncing across the country, and we've been Colorado, Arizona, Oklahoma, and Texas in recent months. And I got to tell you, it is so frustrating and upsetting to travel across parts of Arizona is one example where I remember, and the housing situation on some of those native lands is just deplorable. It's unbelievable that those people are living in that kind of a structure and in that kind of living situation. And so that served as a real motivator for me. Like, I just thought that is sickening to see, people having to live in that kind of situation. So what we want to do as a company is be able to be part of that solution. And, we chose SOLV as our company name, quite by intention. It was, we want to be part of that solution for many people, and that includes, the Native American nations. So there's some strong interest on our part to figure out, what materials make sense, what structure makes sense, and to be part of solutions for whether it's residential housing or whether it's schools, and there's talk about housing for teachers and that sort of thing. We want to be able to build quickly and with sensible materials in those environments, right away. And so that's anybody that can help us create those resources to serve those needs. We want to talk to them.
You're speaking my language. Well, I've got to give a shout out. I hear another from Sarah. Good morning. I'm living in Schooley. I don't know where that's at. Do you know where that's at, Jim?
No, I don't. Okay.
This is awesome. Tiny house movement, for the tiny house movement. Where else I see a ton of tiny homes is in the retirement communities, Florida, where mold is such an issue, or up in California where fires are such an issue.
Right.
These models or this type style of home where there are multiple homes or second homes, and
sure,
flood and mold risk is such an issue. The sustainability needs to be addressed. What do you know about sustainability of hemp products?
A lot less than I'm new to it, so yeah. My exposure is fairly new, but my initial understanding about it is, stronger than steel, obviously lighter than steel. To me, it's among the safest materials that you can put. When you think about what frightens me when I hear about people converting, for example, any kind of a shipping container into residential housing, I just worry about the contents of that house as far as any kind of chemicals that have been used in that preparation. I just worry about that. So clearly what I know about hemp is it's 100% natural, and it's going to be fire resistant, as I've heard you talk about. And so those are all wonderful solutions to me. I just want something that is my concern. I think when I first reached out to you is I know that hemp is a wonderful product. My question, before I would be able to commit to a large order of housing, I would need to know about the availability. That's where my big question is how can I be sure that I can deliver on an order, if just based on availability. So that's really where my interest is now, is figuring out just who can supply the materials to meet those orders.
The large quantity, and right. And this is something we said before: egg before the chicken, chicken before the egg, or horse before the buggy. We now have a demand. I posted an article the other day from Patagonia that Patagonia is looking to buy hemp fiber all over, and just cannot fulfill their order in the United States. And now it's back to, we have to educate our farmers of the opportunities to grow. You have to educate the counties. I was informed a couple weeks ago that there's counties within Utah that don't allow any hemp growth at all, let alone, anything for cannabis and medical consumption, but just industrial hemp. And so, it really is back to this supply and demand. Sure. I would love to see and have some confidence that there will be some manufacturing facilities within the next year that we could plant a large, thousands of acres in Utah alone of industrial hemp and manufacture within our own state. But it is at least a year out, right, before you can really put that in. But I know I was talking to or speaking with somebody else about hemp blocks, crete blocks to build homes. And to fulfill an entire facility, they're looking at only 2,000 acres, to build 700 to 1,000 homes out of hemp blocks a year. Plus, it's only 2,000 acres. And so you're growing that from the Midwest. When we talk, once the Midwest picks up and really starts growing, we're looking at thousands and hundreds and thousands of acres of hemp that now is within the United States and growing. But if we don't get a hold of that before our big buyers or supply chain go out of the country to purchase, bringing it back into the United States is going to be tricky.
So let me throw in there that, you're talking to somebody who grew up on a farm and ranch in Oklahoma. Like Dad was a corn and wheat farmer when I was young, all irrigated crops. And then about the time I became tractor driving age, the entire operation was converted over to alfalfa. And so my point is, having grown up around those farmers in the Midwest and growing up on a farm myself, I know that their ability to produce this kind of crop, they could flip a switch and produce hemp for all of us and be able to produce, in great quantities, to meet this need. So let me just be a student and ask you, what do you know about who's currently allowed to grow hemp? Where can they grow hemp in this country?
Almost everywhere. It's federally legal, right? It's down to the counties, and some of the counties, there's one county that I'm aware of in Utah that we're going to try to get changed. But again, when this came in, it was the fear that if you touch the plant, you're going to get high, right? And then it goes back. One thing that I'm really pushing for is to pull a carbon footprint with some technology from some of our members. They've got the ability to pull a carbon footprint on any crop 5 years back. So they can go in over these alfalfa farms and say, this is what you're getting compared to this is what we would get on a carbon footprint, or this is how much water is being consumed. For cotton alone, cotton, we're looking at 1/20th of the water consumption. I think where I see a big switch, right, is a lot of these alfalfa farms are watered with wheel lines, and you can't use the wheel line to water hemp. It grows really, really tall.
Right.
And so that's going to be an adjustment. If we get some of these fields that are watered on a flood or a drip line or maybe even a sprinkler, that's a very different.
Right. Well, I grew up with both flood irrigation and the center pivot or the overhead sprinklers that you see. And so I know their ability to grow that. We planted stuff 160 acres, at a time. So your ability to produce hemp from an irrigated circle is, you could certainly produce that. I think my question becomes, how do you then, what kind of equipment is available to harvest it and convert it into a usable byproduct or whatever? That's the part I don't know. If farmers could produce this in great quantity in a short period of time, the question is, how do we then convert that to a building material, a usable material?
Well, and this is where I've always heard, I'm going to get a little mushy for a minute because this is where my passion or my belief in what I'm doing is good, is right. It's working. I've always believed what you put out there or heard what you put out there comes to you, right? And that when you manifest this, it's been very easy for me to talk about the value with very little resistance to hemp, right? To the building and the infrastructure or whatever. What's been also amazing is the number of people that have come to the surface over the last month that said, I'm very interested in investing or putting a facility together. Now their concern is, I don't have enough hemp, right? Now our growers have this concern that there's not this manufacturing facility. And so I'm going to go back again to the value of an association or something like this, where, when you come to me and say, hey, I'm working with the tribes and I've got an investor on the back end that says, hey, I really think we should meet up with these tribes because I've got a facility that I want to put in, and now we can fulfill, allow them to grow. It really has been just that. And us putting out there and utilizing a resource like this to say, this is what we're trying to do. We have all of these opportunities. We have orders on the back end. Now we need our, who's ready to farm, who's ready to invest, and let's put those pieces together. When we host our meetings, our monthly meetings, some of that comes up, but I'll tell you what, I get flooded afterwards with opportunities and ways to connect. And what I'd really like to do now is put some of those pieces together. I would like to have you and Bob and some of our farmers or investors on the phone and say, listen, this is what I have. This is what you have. What is that one missing piece? And I don't think without an association, any other industry, there are opportunities to bring this together. And in this industry, it's been difficult.
Right.
Because you don't get on LinkedIn and I don't know that you're in the cannabis space or hemp space or have interest in that space unless we've spoken typically. Very rarely is it posted publicly or hadn't been.
Right.
And so I'm confident, I guess, and I'm working hard and due diligently, I guess, in doing my due diligence to put these pieces together. But I've been amazed at how it's just working, Jim.
Right.
It's coming together, right? But I think it's a matter of us putting out there and saying, listen, I want to bring $500 million in revenue to Utah in the next 500 days. And in order to do that, I have to have manufacturing facilities, and I have to be able to educate my rural communities of the value of growing hemp. Now I can keep money and opportunities in our rural communities and process and now transport product anywhere in the world through our inland port. Right? Through our Utah is positioned perfect for manufacturing. And so, yeah, Jim, I think that opportunities just like this, and what I was excited to even share is now we can share this publicly, but then open it up and say, I have Jim on the phone. Here's what he's working on or what we're doing, and here's what our next opportunity is.
That sounds great.
I really do think, though, that the next conversation we need to have is putting some of these pieces together, because we do have relationships with all the way from the tribe to the investor, the manufacturer, and then the distributor. And if we can provide our tribes or any rural community, right, housing opportunities from their own crop,
right,
it becomes sustainable within our own communities instead
Absolutely.
of having to outsource everything. And all of our product, a lot of the concern I hear from outsourced product is, again, hemp's ability to remediate the soil and suck everything out when another country is planting hemp next to their nuclear plant, their radioactive, say, facilities, right? Now we're shipping this back into the United States. Same thing, if we can keep Patagonia and some of these large companies, Levi's, that are manufacturing, like you said, it'll grow crazy. We have to get people growing it. And then on the flip side, we have to have a place where we can connect those supply chains. And without a large association or group that's in the know and that these large companies know to go to, I don't see it, but I think that.
Well, let me say that I would definitely put you on my list of difference makers. And I can just tell you, I'm gonna throw my support into your association, because your ability to connect and to manifest is real. And I know that you'll make a difference here, and I look forward to playing a role in that with you. And certainly, our housing company is certainly going to pledge to participate in any way that it can. But I think it'll be fun to try to connect the dots. As I think through what I'm hearing you describe from the farmer in me, the guy who grew up doing that sort of thing. We used to, just quickly to help you understand my understanding of what happens here. We used to harvest irrigated blue stem grass. And although I've not seen hemp in the field, I can imagine how they would describe that as rank, like the type of, a product or stem that you get from a hemp product is bound to be similar. And so the challenges in doing that versus a alfalfa field or something like that, it's going to take the right kind of equipment. Now, I also bring a lot of connections. I have a lot of relationships, and I've just been in Salt Lake City now about 4 years, and I've developed a lot of great relationships and really more difference makers who can really help connect some of these dots, because the investment, it looks to me like, needs to happen on the mechanization part, and how I think our ability to grow hemp is really not the challenge here. The question is, how do you then convert it into something that's going to be usable to all builders? And so I'd love to play a role in that. I'm just telling you, I would love to get involved in that and help in any way I can.
Well, I'm excited because I think you will be, and I know your passion. But hi, Ryan.
Hello, everybody. Hey, Jim. Hey, sorry I'm so late.
That's okay.
I had a very unexpected call that I had to take.
I hope it was good.
It was good. It was. All around payments again.
Oh, so. Good. Perfect. Hey, I do see a couple of comments on here I want to bring up real quick. Dave Power asked, can hemp crops be grown year after year be grown year after year with regular fertilization? Is there anything in the soil that is depleted to the point of unusability? I'm assuming that he's asking about hemp, and that hemp can be grown right after. The concern is what you're using that hemp for then. If you're growing hemp for fiber and concrete, what's in that hemp is less of a concern versus growing for a CBD product or consumable, because everything that's in the soil will now be in that plant. And so when you're planting for consumption, be sure that you're testing for metals and pesticides and fertilizers, because it will suck it all up. And that kind of goes back to your point, Jim, that we interviewed a gentleman, Brian, from Americana Labs, and their big focus has been on the level of metals that we have inside of us, and how everything we're consuming has metals, right? And so then also going back to where we're living is probably contributing to what's in us, right? Like you said, the storage containers, the lead in the paint, the asbestos. Using hemp eliminates all of that. And now it's more breathable, more sustainable, mold resistant, fire resistant for hours at a time. So, anyways, I hope that answered the question for Dave.
That kind of raises something for me, Mandy. Like, having grown up on around irrigated corn, they can raise corn again and again, but what you see, they have to reintroduce fertilizer. Corn is like going to be similar to hemp in that it requires a lot from the soil, it requires a lot of water, and it's going to deplete the soil, and so you have to reintroduce fertilizer. So that's one more way that we need to be responsible, with our growers, and make sure that we're introducing a sensible amount of fertilization and using soil appropriately. Then they rotate crops and those kind of things to make that work better. But farmers will figure that out. We just have to do it responsibly.
Sorry, and yes, that's exactly right. I know that, and I'm not the expert on the growing side at all. And to be honest, I'm not an expert in anything, but I know one. But I do know that it is a great rotation crop, and we hear that all the time, what it does for the soil, and being able to plant it between certain crops, it complements very well. Right. Ryan, we've been talking a lot about housing and sustainable housing and opportunity to bring hemp into those solutions. Over this last week, I had an investor reach out looking for opportunities to invest. And of course, I'm excited to plug him into information about this opportunity instead of investing in the cannabis or consumption, health and wellness space. But do you have anything you want to add before we go on, or any questions? No, just listen.
No, just missing the first 30 minutes. I feel bad because I don't know all the conversations, but no, I do think that it is interesting. Looking for a shift in how we build houses. I'm very curious to see what type of products people come up with this plant, and how sustainable that can be, and what scalability we can go with it. I think the tiny house movement does show that there is a lot of interest in decreasing the impact we have with our housing, and so I'm curious to see what people start coming up with, and I'm more curious to see if Home Depot starts coming out with signs that say this is made by hemp. At what point do we start seeing where we have a Home Depot that's like a Whole Foods, that the alternative plant, I guess, building material, right? Instead of just the trees, the lumber that we're used to, all the stuff we're used to. When is it going to start? There's got to be a home improvement store that comes out that's all green.
Okay, so here's what I want to do, and I don't even know if I should put this out there, but I'm going to. I want our organization to own a manufacturing facility. right?
There you go.
Co-op, our growers can bring their product, we can manufacture it, and then sell it back to our towns, communities, whatever it is. But if we as an organization can provide those decorticators and those manufacturing facilities, now their risk is no longer on the farmer to get rid of their product, right? It completes that supply chain. But us being able to pull together and put a manufacturing facility next to some of these large grows allows our rural communities and smaller places to reap that benefit, right? These co-ops are so valuable in the ag space. But it would be great to see either an individual come in, but that's what it's going to take. If somebody's going to have to come in and say, okay, in for the long haul, right? This isn't a turnover, put your money in and tomorrow hit the gold rush like it was in the beginning of the cannabis and hemp industry in 2018, I guess, right? Or when it first started. But I think that the opportunity is a much longer play with better sustainable options and really getting in now. I think part of my big rush about having a opportunity or an association where we can create some information and some supply chain solutions, I guess, is that we're in a time crunch. It's either now or never, right? It's either going to be us or somebody else. And I would love to be able to be that solution. And so, yeah, I would love to put it out on the table and find a way for us as an association to participate in a co-op or in a manufacturing facility so that our small farms can still reap the benefits of being able to grow without worrying about not getting in on a big contract, because there's these huge contracts that need a ton of product, but Utah is just not going to grow like the Midwest will.
Yeah, it's certainly going to be different. I mean, in raising crops, I mean, it's never going to change. The Midwest is going to be able to supply the majority of the mass, and they always have because of their soil. Their
climate, they can grow 4, 5, 6 crops a year, and we can grow 1 or 2, right? Something though, Jim, that Justin actually just said too. Justin said, with the right data, you can show the state where the best hemp fiber grows, and something like that get something like that subsidized. Wow, I cannot read. I agree. I think that there's a lot of opportunity and a lot of grants right now when we talk about COVID and opportunities to help rural areas and jobs. With data and with our carbon footprint and showing what's there, I think he's exactly right. There's those opportunities. And I would love our brilliant minds that are good at the grants and the, that have networks. Let's tap into those networks and create that supply chain.
Yeah. And I mean, right now you already have different growers that are creating strains of hemp to grow in different areas, kind of like what Justin is talking about. So it is happening. People are getting very creative with growing their hemp to find strains that will work in different areas. I know, for example, there is a grower down in Colorado where they planted a field last year, and they had, they did their harvest last year. This year they haven't planted anything. They've let that field just sit, so no extra rain. And they've got some plants that are coming up that are thriving. And so why did those seeds come up with zero water or extra water from, their pivot? And they're just relying on rainwater, which has come very infrequent this year for them. And these plants are thriving. So you've got scenarios like that where people are seeing that, and now they are going to be cloning those plants to try and create strains for dry climates.
Oh yeah.
There's strains that are being developed right now for places that have short growing seasons that can go from seed to harvest in less than 90 days in dry areas, for areas in the Southwest where the growing seasons are short and it's hot and dry, right? So that is happening. To Justin's point there, it is happening. It's just going to take time, because in developing strains of anything, it takes time because you've got to grow it. You've got to let it go to seed. You've got to test it, and you've got to go through generations of it before you get any pure strain that's going to work for you, so it's happening. And I think it's happening in a very accelerated rate right now. We just don't see it, because people are in the background doing all this. But I do feel that in the next few years, we're going to start seeing this explode, and we're going to see those strains that are going to work for the different areas. And then it's a matter of really putting those into production. And then what are you going to be putting them in production for? Is it going to be industrial, or is it going to be more of the health side of it? So I still feel like, and we've had these conversations in the past too, Mandy, where I don't think we've seen the rush of people getting into the industrial side yet. I feel like, and I'm sure I know there's a lot of stuff happening in the background that we don't know, but you just don't hear about it yet. But you can sense that momentum is building, and that there are people out there that are developing technologies to get us to that point, right? Exactly.
Just like Jim, right?
It's happened.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Well, and it's still yesterday or last week when someone with an investment looking to seek investment in the industry, it's just the being unaware of, or the lack of education or knowledge about what's available and what's out there, because what we've heard is the consumption or health and wellness side. Everything is the buzz around what CBD does or what cannabis does. Or if I say, hey, I'm in the cannabis industry, everybody says, oh, so you smoke? Well, I want to build houses. Like, is that the same thing? I want to make plastic bottles. I want biofuels. I want to build cars out of it. And so, yeah, I think it is. It's just going to be a matter of education. And Jim, moving forward, I would love to really sit down and discuss and kind of open up our Rolodex or our networks and see if we can put together, how fast can we get different manufacturing facilities. And it's right. We do need to figure out what is it we're growing, and are we going to grow for clothing or for building supplies? Or do we do one of each, and because they're two different fibers and they're grown very differently, and not all fibrous hemp can be used for clothing, but most all hemp can be used for construction materials, and so understanding that and what that looks like as well. But and just as fast as we can, what does education look like to say, hey, we have a supply chain now put together. Now you as farmers are in the ag space are safe to grow, right? And now we can export instead of exporting alfalfa to South Korea. Let's manufacture.
Right. So I'm going to come away from this conversation today thinking about who are the first 5 phone calls that I need to make, right? Like I know I need to start connecting some dots here. And I think to kind of piggyback what I heard Ryan say, I know that that there is this momentum. I see the momentum from my perspective, and Ryan doesn't know that I've just barely been in the housing sector for a year and a half here. So a lot of what I know, including hemp, has come from that recent education. But what I see is a real shift. There's momentum. We've seen, even though they're not exactly related, what we've seen with the legalization of cannabis and now with the movement on hemp, it looks like there's a lot of momentum across that entire sector. And I attribute, I hope rightfully, to this millennial generation, in my mind, has kind of instigated this shift where there's more of an interest in the sustainability piece. And what I see in that generation, and I do have an opportunity to have conversations with many from that generation regularly. And what I see is that there's a shift that's not insignificant, where we're just not accepting those things that have always been the way we've done things. We can do better, and I'm seeing out of that generation that they're going to find ways to do better. And I think this is I only share that to say that if I'm an investor looking at hemp, I think what you're going to see is this generation, this younger generation, is only going to stimulate this further and further as they move along. And so you're just going to see hemp and cannabis and all these things just become a bigger and bigger part of our society going forward. And we just need to be smart enough to recognize it and jump onto the movement.
Grow with it. It's not going away. It's no longer a conversation of if it's bad. It's a conversation of how do we use it? How do we grow with it? How do you embrace it? What works for you? Yeah, very, very well said. I'm impressed. I just saw a message from Cindy. Speaking of, her ears must have been burning because we were talking about it earlier. But First Nation sourcing. This is her business. Is that right?
That's right.
Sourcing sustainable resources,
right,
for housing and different solutions, right? Both tribal and rural communities, places like that.
Right.
Cindy, I'm calling out to you. We're going to have you on our show here next. We got into a call and she also got to go camping, and I haven't connected with her, so she missed our meeting on Tuesday as well. But I'll definitely get you guys added to the next one.
Look, if I need data and research, Cindy's my first call.
Okay.
She does more homework and research on this industry than anybody I've met.
Oh, I love it. Well, I'm excited, and I'm excited to have her on board. But I definitely think in this next week, let's get on a Zoom call, even if it's with, say, 10 of us, and really start the ball moving or rolling about where we're at and what we actually need. You know, there's been a lot of discussion on the big scale globally, but I feel like, Malcolm Gladwell's book, The Tipping Point, I feel like is right where we're at. We're at a tipping point to make a massive change in our economy, in our industry, in sustainability, jobs, and we're really close. And so if we can put all of the pieces together, we will tip right over and put Utah on the map.
And you can make the argument that environmentally, we need to do it now.
Yeah.
Yes.
It needs to happen now.
Yes. For those of you, I'd actually, maybe what I'll do is put some good effort into bringing somebody on the show to address that specifically. Because I just don't think it's a topic that's brought up enough or even understood. Everybody is starting to get the point that it's good for our health, right? It cures a lot or treats a lot, but there's still a lot of resistance because there's still a lot of garbage out there. It's a very different conversation when we talk about building a 1,500 square foot home for less than $20,000.
Mm-hmm.
That is fire resistant for 9 hours under direct flame.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
and I'm not making it up. And I'm not saying every hemp product is that, but the hemp I know is that.
Yeah. And we're not doing it because, like, what's the holdup?
Right. Well, and that's a question that I get asked a lot. You know, what's your answer? I have one, and it really is. It's this egg before the chicken and chicken before the egg. Somebody is going to have to come in with $100 million, for example, and say, I'm going to put this in knowing for the long haul, it's a long play, right? But understanding that supply chain, if you build a facility and you don't have any hemp to process or anybody to buy the product, that's where we get stuck. However, I think creating this circle is what keeps coming up, Jim. And I think that this is why you and I can connect and say, listen, I've got somebody that, you know, that works with the tribes. We can pull on our resources that know what's needed. We can now pull funding together or grants together to create opportunities for rural communities, right? The carbon footprint and the air and the oxygen, you know, those are all big issues that keep coming up that are all that we find solutions in hemp with hemp. And so,
go ahead. I was just jump in quickly and just say, Amanda, you don't know that I'm really a process guy. Like, I'm heavy on, even though I'm in the finance sector, operations and processes are a big part of what I do. And I hear you about the 100 million, but I also think that you could prove critical parts of this concept, you know, with a lot less than that, to be able to, because to me, there's some critical pieces of this that need to be proven. And it goes to, you know, can we really mass produce? Can we deliver, you know, finished materials? And so I think you have to be able to prove critical parts of that. And maybe, you know, as I'm hearing from Ryan, maybe that stuff is already happening out there. I have no doubt about the agricultural piece. American agriculture can produce this crop. It's just a question for me of how do you convert it then to actual building materials. And so maybe those pieces are out there already, Ryan. I'm just not exposed to that yet. But that's the part that I think you'd want to try to prove. If I'm going to be a big investor, there's pieces of the concept that in my mind, and again, I'm new to it, but just my perspective is, if I were going to invest, I'd want to know that you can connect, A to Z. And so there's going to be some pieces in there that need to be proven.
Well, and again, this is where I go back. Association or an organization that has a go-to for the resources, the supply chains, any questions, media, whatever it is, I think is even more valuable in a situation like this. We may have to we may bring in money from one state and manufacturing from another state and, transport hemp in from a different place to put this together right now, because it's not in every state and it's not everywhere, but it's something that we need and to jumpstart. And we're going to do that.
Yeah. Well, I think, there's a shift to be unselfish here. Like I see you see people being real confidential in this segment. They want to make all the money for themselves. And I just see, oh my gosh, this is a huge, huge undertaking. It's going to take all of us. Let's cooperate and work together, just because there's tons of opportunity for everyone. So it's hard for me to watch people be real selective and protective, of what they're working on.
Well, and it's that scarcity mindset. Right? This is an abundance. We're at the very start of a huge industry we haven't even, like you said, started to tap into this. With that being said, is exactly why, Jim, we built or are building an association the way that we are to represent all organizations. I don't know any other product that fits in home building and health and wellness and electronics and automotive and right? This is a product that will fit in every vertical in every industry, and anybody can take a piece of. And with an association of hemp associations, we're able to represent all of those verticals. And so I open this up to, I want to get involved with all of the home builders. I want to get involved with the consumers of electronics, right? Anybody in the electronic industry, anybody in the plastics and automotives. But this is how we, raise the bar and connect those dots, is collectively, right? All of us have to come together. I don't know where I was going with that. I got off on it.
Hey, Jim, I was going to ask you, do you guys have any projects around Utah that we could possibly see?
No, we've not built our first. We have a couple of MOUs. We have a memorandum of understanding in place on a couple of projects, but we've actually yet to do our first build. We anticipate having our first builds by the close of this year. So we'd have some to show you. Currently, we just have renderings. So no, we're very much at the launch stage.
Gotcha.
Dawn, I'm going to reach out to you on research projects. Your name has been dropped many times in this hat. She's getting ready to go back to school, and we're talking about different research. I'd love to utilize her. She's a fabulous attorney, but definitely putting some information together when it talks about research and getting some info out. And Jim, that's maybe something in this next meeting that we touch on also, is as we do our research and send surveys out. We can really utilize that to power where we're going. So having all hands on deck there as well, and understanding what we're looking for and what's already been done and what we can pull from and aggregate and so forth.
Right. Very good.
Cool. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I had a great time. Anything else, Ryan or John, you guys have going? No?
No, just prepping for the event this week. So, yeah.
Anybody, there's a big CBD event up in Park City this week. It's a private event, obviously, because of COVID and the way that they've set it up. But they've got, 25 or 30 big companies coming
in.
And then they do, this time, instead of like a open exhibit type, it's a one-on-one. So everybody gets a suite up at the Zermatt, and then you meet one-on-one with these different companies and go out to dinner and stuff. So great way to build relationships on a bigger scale with some companies all over the nation. So I'm excited for that. It'll be a good opportunity. Anything else we
that'd be
can do
fun.
for you, Jim? What can we do to help
No,
you?
I want to have lunch with John one day soon, because I think, John, you probably have your finger on the pulse of that young group that I'm talking about, this millennial generation. I'd like to get, feedback from anybody who can kind of corroborate, the things that I'm seeing on that. And of course, I'd love to catch up with you anyway. So let's find time to do that.
Looking forward to it, Jim. I'll reach out to you.
Great.
Awesome. And speaking of, it was funny when we were talking about building our platforms, our social platforms. I do a lot on LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram, but when you talk about the younger generations and talk about where we're growing business, where are they at? And so we went through and we're like, we need a TikTok, we need Snapchat, we need all of these social platforms that I'm not on. That's where they're making their change. And so I'm going to put it out there for those of you that are looking to grow your business. Make sure that you're tapping into all of the social platforms that you may not particularly be involved in, because the younger generation is heavily on Snapchat and TikTok and some of these others that I just don't engage in. But when we're talking about what we're growing and what we're doing, it's definitely different. So, well, Jim, I'll reach out to you. I may just add something to the calendar. If it works out for you, I'd love to have you. But I'd love to start putting some of these pieces together. And if we can really start and move the needle, advance some conversation on what we need as an organization in Utah and globally, and where we can start putting some facilities together or some pieces together for financing or grants. And let's put some facilities out there. Let's start building some homes and really make some change.
Yeah. Outstanding. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much. What I just found out. See, talk about somebody that does some research all the time. Cindy, you're awesome. Half of the planet's population is under 30 years old.
Wow.
So keep that in mind when we talk about our marketing and who we're targeting. And when you talk about sustainability, they're not fools to know what's happening to our earth and economy and world with pollution, and they're very passionate about their oceans.
They're going to solve a lot of the problems that we couldn't solve.
Absolutely. Thank gosh.
It's all about traditions, right? Because we're so embedded in our way of thinking that we need a new generation to come in and wipe out that thinking and start new again.
They're just kind of shedding the old mindset, and I love it.
Perfect. Hey, well, thank you very much for listening, and thanks for joining us today, Jim. I appreciate your time. I'll be in touch soon, and don't hesitate to holler if you need anything.
Thanks, folks.
Okay, thanks, sir.
Thank you.
See ya.
Bye.
Okay.
Well, Matt, are you home today?
Yeah.
You're not at the office?
No, not yet. I'm going there pretty soon, though. I had to scramble. I actually just got back from Wyoming Downs. I went up to Wyoming over the weekend.
To the horse races.
Yeah, I had never been up there, so it was fun.
I haven't either. I'll bet, yeah.
It was. I was blown away. There were about 20. I think we had like 60 people on Saturday, and we had about 20 big rigs. Trucks and motorhomes and campers and trailers. Wow. It was amazing. I was proud to be a part of the group, and everybody said, "Oh, which rig's yours?" And I was like, "I'm staying in that one over there. I'm sleeping on the couch in that one."
That's funny.
But it was awesome. Great people. I was making fun of myself at the beginning of the show because I really have to reel my passion for what I do back in when people say, "Oh, what do you do?" And because I really want to change the world with hemp. And
sure.
Anyway.
Love it.
Well, then are you
I'm thinking on that show maybe because I'm looking at building my house here sometime, hopefully in the near future. If there's hemp product available, maybe I'll just go all green.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be interesting to test out.
I met a lady this morning who has a couple of acres. We were talking, and she was like, "I would build a few houses on this,
sure.
and rent them out." But I'm trying to talk somebody into building me a model home. Let's build a house and make it a sample home.
There you go.
One of the investors that I met with last week, he said the same thing. Let's build one up in Montana and let's give it a run, show it off.
Sure.
Oh, I'm putting it out
Nice.
there. Okay, well, thank you very much,
Awesome.
you guys. I'll talk to you in a little while. See you later.
We'll see
Have a good
everybody
day.
tomorrow. Bye.